Welcome back to Joygasm, a video game and movie podcast. I am Russ, he is Steve, and Sony returns fire in episode 260 today, February 2nd, 2022. We're going to be getting right into our topic of the day, which is the fact that Sony buys Bungie, so there's no need to fast forward whatsoever. However, before we get started, make sure you smush that subscription button and ring that notification bell. That way you will not miss a single episode of Joygasm, which drops once a week every week. Having said that, it was only a couple of episodes ago, previously on Joygasm, where we were covering the Microsoft acquisition of Activision Blizzard. And that was a doozy in terms of it being a $68.7 billion acquisition. It was just absolutely ginormous, insane in the membrane, to quote a 90s reference. As it stands, however, we were, I would say, waiting with bated breath because surely Sony would have a response to something like this. And I got to say, it was pretty much the perfect response, considering all that Bungie symbolizes within the Xbox community. Wouldn't you say, Steve?
Yeah, I would. But you know, Russ, I got to think of that. Like, this kind of stuff takes time. It doesn't happen right away. Like, Sony just didn't, figure out the story like we heard about it and go, oh, we need to do something. Go buy a property, or go buy an IP. And then they rush over and like, Bungie,
They blindfold themselves. It's like spin the tail, or what is it? Pin the tail on the donkey, and they spin you around like they're spinning all the execs.
They got this big sharp needle.
Go, Billy, run amok!
And a little game company's like, don't pick us up.
They've got the donkey tail.
Don't get him in the eye.
Yeah. I said this was a happy house.
Oh, no, you said no one was going to get hurt at this game.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Sony didn't just go buy somebody. They've been talking for a while. I'm sure that these guys all go out for brewskis every once in a while and be like, hey, hear that so-and-so is considering buying up so-and-so? Oh, really? Mm-hmm. Well, did you hear that other so-and-so is there about buying up? And then secrets and information gets exchanged, Russ. We might not hear about it right away.
Well, I don't think that they're giving insider information just willy-nilly, but I do think I think what you're trying to say is that there are various companies that are courting other companies for a while, but we just don't hear about it until after certain deals are done. Is that what you're trying to say?
That's what always happens.
Because I don't think Phil Spencer is going out and hanging out with Sony and being like, hey, guess what?
I'm not saying
Activision
I'm not
Blizzard.
saying Phil Spencer is, but I mean, Phil Spencer knows the guys from Bungie.
Sure.
But I also think that this is a world that we only see the light of once the story breaks or once we have the game or we see a tweet or something like that.
Indeed.
But it doesn't mean anybody's just zipping it and not talking about anything on their own time either.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you actually touch upon something that I want to dive into, which is the fact that over the past several years,
you've been thinking about diving into a pit of jelly?
No.
Okay.
No. I've been thinking, is that what you've been thinking?
Yes.
Grape or strawberry?
Lime, actually.
I'm sure you have some key lime pie with that.
There you go.
But no, I was thinking about how with this particular acquisition, so, when it comes to the amount, because we haven't actually disclosed that, if you haven't heard, Sony acquired Bungie for $3.6 billion, which, the number by itself is not as impressive as what Microsoft spent on Activision Blizzard to the tune of $68.7 billion. However, when you think about the relativity of everything, so, Activision Blizzard were essentially two publishers that also had a bunch of development under them.
Uh-huh.
So it makes a lot of sense because you have multiple IPs and that sort of thing. Whereas with Bungie, Bungie is a single developer. They're not even a publisher. They've gone into this new space where they are self-publishing and that sort of thing because they left Activision a while ago.
Right.
But at the same time, they, up until this point, have only had the one IP of Destiny. So it is very impressive that they were able to negotiate an acquisition to the tune of $3.6 billion for a single developer. I mean, that if you think about the ZeniMax Bethesda acquisition that Microsoft did, that was $7.5 billion. That's
a lot.
So that, I mean, that literally for one developer, they got almost 50% of what ZeniMax Bethesda received during their particular acquisition. Having looked at that and basically marveled at it, because once again, it was one of those situations where I see the news and all of a sudden, like I saw it this morning, I was like, what and January has become the month of like specific days where I was going to get a cup of coffee and I no longer need the cup of coffee. I mean, it happened when Take-Two Interactive had acquired Zynga. It happened again with the Activision Blizzard thing. And now it's happened again with Bungie. So I'm like, who else are we going to acquire? So I took it upon myself just because we have covered the Activision Blizzard acquisition back when that first happened. That was a huge deal. Still is a huge deal. But then it got me thinking, I'm thinking, okay, this is not going to end anytime soon. In fact, I did some digging because I've honestly kind of forgotten about some of the previous acquisitions that have taken place just within the last handful of years. And I discovered that there really is a trend when it comes to acquiring studios.
Have you?
I have indeed. So I made like this big old list here that I wanted to go down. I tried to put it in some semblance of order, but it's not exactly 100%. Anyway, you should be able to follow it regardless. But I first started out with, looking at the year prior, because there were a number of acquisitions that happened last year. In 2021, Sony acquired Insomniac Games for $229 million. Okay.
Wow.
So you can see how much of an exponential jump in the acquisition prices just within 1 year. I mean, technically it may not be a full year yet, but you take a talented studio like Insomniac Games, which, they make Ratchet and Clank, they make Spider-Man, they made Sunset Overdrive. I mean, they are a talented studio, right?
That's crazy.
229 mil. And then in 2021, Sony also acquired Nixxes Software, Housemarque, which made Returnal. That was the big sleeper hit, one of the hits on Sony last year. You have Fire Sprite Studios. They're the ones who made the Playroom demo that came with the PS5 with all that innovative coolness.
Right.
They acquired Blue Point Games, which was that they're known for all the game remakes for PlayStation and whatnot. And Valkyrie Entertainment, which they also worked on God of War. They were kind of in a support capacity. So, I mean, Sony has been in this mode of acquiring throughout 2021, which, I mean, honestly, I kind of forgot about all that already. And of course, 2021, Xbox acquired ZeniMax Bethesda for $7.5 billion. And then we've already talked about how in 2022, you've had Take-Two Interactive acquire Zynga for $12.7 billion. Then you had Xbox buying Activision Blizzard, $68.7 billion. But then if I go back a little bit further, like if you recall, before 2021, Phil Spencer was up on the stage at E3 talking about how he had this campaign to really bolster kind of the first party stables of Xbox itself, of Xbox Studios.
Right. I think that's when he bought, or he announced the acquisition of Playground Games, I believe.
Yeah, I think so.
Same show.
I think it was definitely in the mix, because I think he was talking about, I think, 5 different types of new studios that they were making at that point in time. And one of the acquisitions that they made was Double Fine Productions, which makes Psychonauts.
Right.
So Tim Schafer's studio then became part of Xbox as well. So yeah, like there's been a lot of this going on. Even in the EA Games side of things, I totally forgot about this. Just last year, 2021, EA Games bought Codemasters for $1.2 billion. Glue Mobile, which makes they've been in the mobile gaming business for years. They have all kinds of games. They bought Glue Mobile for $2.1 billion. And then they also bought Playdemic for $1.4 billion. So, I mean, like in 2021, EA Games spent, what is that? 2, 3, 4. They spent about $4.7 billion. You know, again, this is not chump change, people. This is like a lot of money that's going on. And as a result, I mean, you're seeing all these different studios that we've enjoyed over the decades become increasingly consolidated within these like very like finite amount of like behemoth publishers. So, and then, you know, like that's not all. Like if you think about Tencent, you know, the company who, you know, they ended up buying, I didn't know this, but they straight up bought Riot Games in 2015. So they own League of Legends. Like Tencent now owns Riot Games wholly. I think before, like what I heard about was how they were a significant stakeholder in the company, but then I guess they ended up working out a deal, and now
I'm just buying out. We're tired of this stakeholder business. I'm just not even thinking about it.
So they did that, and they bought. Well, you'll recognize this company.
Oh, will I?
Supercell.
What?
Yeah, Tencent now owns Supercell.
Oh, I think I did hear something about that. Oh man, because wow, I forgot all about it, but I vaguely remember somebody buying Supercell. And Supercell's ginormous. They make billions of dollars every year.
Well, and they make your favorite little mobile game. What's it called, Steve?
Clash of Clans, Clash Royale. Mm-hmm. They actually make a couple other games too, like Heyday and like I think it was Boom Beach. That one I don't really care for. I don't really care for those other ones, but they make a few games.
Yeah. They are a recognizable entity for sure.
They are. Yeah, Supercell's awesome.
So that's kind of like a quick synopsis of like what's been going on within the last handful of years. So we can talk more about that in a bit, but I thought we could, once we getting that kind of picture established.
Right.
Peaches? I'm not sure what that is.
Cantaloupes.
You derailed me.
Sorry about that.
Pivoting from whatever that was to the Sony Bungie details. So I basically went through all these different articles and just kind of sifted out some of the zingers, so to speak. So I thought I would go through all this. GameIndustry.biz reported that following the deal, Bungie will run as, quote, an independent subsidiary of Sony Interactive Entertainment and will remain a multi-platform studio with the option to, quote, self-publish and reach players where they choose to play, end quote.
Then that's similar to what happened with Microsoft buying Activision. They were saying that it's not like their games, like Call of Duty is not going to be exclusive to Microsoft. Like you're not just going to be able to play Call of Duty on a Xbox. Like you're going to be able to play it multi-platform.
I think this one is a bit different because Microsoft straight up acquired Activision and Blizzard, and they made it a point to come out and say how the pre-existing Call of Duty games will honor their contracts, basically, like their commitments and contract that they've already signed on the dotted line. So all of the current standard Call of Duty games, yes, they will be multiplayer, but I have a feeling in the future, and again, this kind of hints at, it's all about like dissecting the details between these quotes, right? Like, both parties in this instance are having words that are very much in this honeymoon period, right? Like they're very excited to be with each other. They have a kumbaya attitude about how gamers shouldn't worry regardless of which console you have or that you favor, how these games will always be available for your respective systems. However, I think that they are being very calculating in terms of how they wordsmith these press releases, because I think, once again, legally, there's really nothing they can do. Like if there are contracts that are already signed for certain games, they have to honor those contracts. And they can wordsmith it to make them look like, oh, look how thoughtful that person is. That doesn't necessarily mean they're going to carry that forward in future games.
I remember reading something. I'm telling you, I remember reading something on when that happened and this happened, where people are saying, hey, it's not a console war anymore. It's more of a content war. That's why I've seen like a quote in both.
IGN had an article that they titled that. They said they were talking about a content war, but we talked about that too. I mean, I was even talking about how this is turning more into like a Netflix type of situation where it's all about the Game Pass, right? You have the Xbox Game Pass, and I think there's a very strong possibility that Sony may have their own version of a Game Pass that intentionally will be available on multiple platforms, because at the end of the day, content is king, right? Like if they can get people to play their specific games from their specific Game Pass, all that money is getting funneled to that particular company.
And or if there's other stuff to buy, like skins and weapons and, you know, whatnot, DLC.
Oh, sure.
Then it would be smart to have multiple systems play the game, because if you only go, okay, well, you know, we're going to divide the community in half and only going to take money from this side. Mm-hmm. This side is screwed. You know, we don't want you wouldn't want your money at all. It would make sense to say, hey, we're going to still make the game. We'll funnel money to Bungie, but I mean, we're going to let that content still go to the other side of the aisle to Microsoft, because their players still like to play, of course, Destiny, and we want their money too. I mean, it would be wrong and probably not good business savvy just to exclude certain amount of consumers just because they don't have a PlayStation, they have a Microsoft underneath their TV.
I have some additional quotes here. So this one is from Sony Interactive Entertainment President, CEO Jim Ryan. Quote, "We've had a strong partnership with Bungie since the inception of the Destiny franchise, and I couldn't be more thrilled to officially welcome the studio to the PlayStation family," end quote. In the official PlayStation blog post, Ryan begins by confirming Bungie's independence with another quote saying, "I want to be very clear to the community that Bungie will remain an independent and multi-platform studio and publisher." Ryan also says that Bungie will, quote, "sit alongside the PlayStation Studios organization," end quote, where apparently these two groups will collaborate. Now, in a separate blog post, Bungie detailed what the acquisition means for the company itself, calling SIE, quote, "a partner who unconditionally supports us in all we are and who wants to accelerate our vision to create generation-spanning entertainment, all while preserving the creative independence that beats in Bungie's heart," end quote. I have one more here I want to talk about too. In the full Game Industry Biz interview with Ryan and Bungie CEO Pete Parsons, which was published after Christopher Dring's tweets. And Christopher Dring's he works over at Game Industry. He's been with that. He's a head coach over there. Ryan said that Sony has many more moves to make. He also talked about Sony's ambition to grow its live services and grow beyond PlayStation's, quote, historic console heartland. So all those quotes have, you can tell that there is a desire to want to set expectations out the gate. Like there's been a lot of handshaking, a lot of backroom talks. And now that it's gone public, you can tell that they are, first of all, they're trying to address any concerns that the gaming community has with this deal. But I think also they're wanting to be able to, in a very diplomatic fashion, but in a very public press release fashion, like a paper trail fashion, they want to be able to set the tone and set expectations with each other so that there isn't any kind of mistake at all. Even though they have it, I'm sure, in writing, and their army of lawyers from both sides have like scrutinized the contract and stuff. It is very interesting how Bungie in particular is very vocal about maintaining their independence as someone who will continue, or not someone, but like an entity that will continue to self-publish their games and make their own games that they are interested in making in the first place. And I think of their previous relationships that they've had with Microsoft and with Activision, because if you recall,
right,
back in the day, it was no secret about how, like, when they worked over at Microsoft on Halo, they got burned out, right? Like they were making Halo game after Halo game. All of their Halo games were fantastic, but they wanted to do something else. However, Microsoft was hesitant to put them on anything else because it was just this cash machine. And so they were able to make some sort of negotiation to leave Microsoft and leave them with the Halo license. And then they started working on Destiny, and they were actually, I remember this, they were by themselves at first and then accepted kind of an acquisition, well, not really an acquisition, but like a partnership with Activision, in which case they were with Activision largely for a long time with the whole Destiny franchise before then also breaking away from Activision and going solo once more. So I think as a result, they have gotten a lot of industry experience on that side of things when it comes to working with publishers. And they probably have many stipulations as a result that they probably presented with Sony saying, okay, if you want to acquire us, these are the stipulations that are, basically non-negotiable. If you say no to any of them, then it will be a deal breaker. And because Bungie is one of the best studios in the industry, and because Sony really, really wants them badly, they said okay. And so I say good for Bungie, because hopefully it will allow them to continue doing what they're doing without any kind of like outside forces applying unnecessary pressure. Like, we've seen that in the past with other studios, like BioWare, for instance. You and I were very excited about Anthem to come out, but then all of a sudden we get it and we realize this is not the game that was advertised. Sucks. And then all of a sudden you start to find out why it wasn't the game that was sold. And it was because of EA basically being EA. There you go.
Oh wait, we have a foot we haven't shot yet. Hold on.
This little piggy stayed home.
The whole family of piggies just stayed in for the night.
Oh boy. I lost my place momentarily. However, let's see. Let me go back down here real quick. Okay. There was an additional quote I would like to cover with Sony's president, CEO, Jim Ryan. Quote, I've been on record talking about increasing the size of the PlayStation community and expanding beyond our historic console heartland. This can take many forms. We are starting to go multi-platform. You've seen that. We have an aggressive roadmap with live services and the opportunity to work with and particularly learn from the brilliant and talented people from Bungie. That is going to considerably accelerate the journey we find ourselves on, end quote. Now, that by itself is a strong indication of what they're wanting to do. They essentially are wanting to continue going down this path of exploring a live service. What does live service mean to you, Steve?
Well, nothing else other than a Game Pass type thing, Russ.
Ding, ding, ding.
Right.
What have we got for him, Johnny?
Or it could be like a specific, like competitive Bungie, Destiny kind of, competition. Live competition just for Destiny. Kind of like esports, Russ, just for Destiny.
Well, another little tidbit, another little detail is that Bungie apparently is working on a brand new IP in addition to Destiny.
Yeah, that's probably where a lot of this deal started to come in, Russ, is because Destiny's already out there. People play it on PlayStation. People play it on Xbox. People play it on
it's a huge hit.
PC.
Yeah.
And so, but what else are they doing? What else are they brewing? You know what I mean? It's been a while since they have come out with something brand spanking.
Well, but that's to be expected, just because when they were first announcing Destiny, I remember them talking about their roadmap, saying how they were planning to support that game for at least 10 years.
But what else are they going to do?
Oh,
I mean, they have Destiny, but they got to do some other stuff. I mean, Rockstar has GTA, but they do other stuff besides GTA.
Right. But I think too, you have to look at where, Rockstar Games got its start versus where Bungie got its start. If you think about how Rockstar, they started working on multiple different types of GTAs. Bungie started working on Halos. Well, Bungie left Microsoft, so they no longer work on Halo. They worked on the next IP, which is Destiny. If you think about, Rockstar Games has more IPs that they've generated. They have like Red Dead Redemption, which is there's their Destiny, right? Whatever. But on top of that, they made Bully, and they
yeah.
made what was that one I loved? It was the 1940s detective.
Oh gosh, yes, I can see it.
I could see it now.
I can see it now. Noir, no, something noir.
Film noir? No, L.A. Noir.
L.A. Noir.
L.A. Noir.
That's it.
So anyway, it's not like they have like a huge treasure trove more than Bungie does. And also, too, I actually appreciate what Bungie has done with their commitment to games like Destiny in the sense that they didn't just like half bake the game and then abandon it. I think that we've been victims as gamers in other instances, Anthem and others, where like, we
got
were
some on me there.
I'm sorry.
Non-COVID germs. Still gross.
Yeah. Following a news of the acquisition, Bungie released a Q&A addressing some common questions players and fans might have for the future of the company. One of the big questions is whether Bungie's future games, currently in development, aka the brand new IP, will become PlayStation exclusives, to which Bungie responds flatly, no. Yet a new wrinkle in the story, folks.
New wrinkle in your forehead.
Quote, no, we want the worlds we are creating to extend to anywhere people will play games. We will continue to be self-published, creatively independent, and we will continue to drive one unified Bungie community, end quote. So once again, even the new IP they're working on, they have full intentions, at least according to these quotes here that have been very vocal. They are going to also plan to have it be multi-platform. It will not be a Sony exclusive.
Yeah, you're not going to see Microsoft going to go world premiere and then show a Bungie game. That's all going to be Sony. Years to come, Russ. That's all going to be on the Sony booth.
Well, I have no idea, Steve. I have no idea. I'm sure.
That's my idea.
I'm sure Xbox will have their own world premieres,
just not for Bungie.
not from Bungie. No. So, some other stuff that I thought was worth covering too is that Destiny 2 fans were quick to observe that Bungie's roadmap doesn't preclude timed exclusives for PlayStation platforms. There was one particular quote that IGN actually surfaced from someone on Reddit, said, quote, if Bungie goes back to that year-long PlayStation exclusivity BS.
What's that mean?
Well, yeah. Without the abbreviation.
Bullshnikes.
Yeah. I'm going to be pissed. Imagine them doing that crap with entire dungeons or raids, end quote. So, the Bungie community also, specifically the Destiny community, is also, let's just say they are there's a lot of little chit chat going on the Reddits.
Yeah.
On the Reddits. Because
some
obviously,
typage.
I think some folks are understandably excited for the deal. I think some folks are understandably concerned about this deal as well. And really, like, they just want to be able to know what their gaming future looks like. So I'm sure that with Bungie being pretty good about listening to its own community, it'll be interesting to see like how they go down this path.
Did your notes say anything about how much money Destiny has been making? Everything they've been selling, like, of course the game, but I mean all the DLCs is.
No, do you happen to know those numbers off the top of your head?
I read something. I don't know how accurate it is.
Well, we don't want to be talking about any inaccurate information.
Toss some ideas around, though, can't we?
Well, try not to speculate too much.
I like to speculate, though, Russ. What I read was
$100 million. Wait, that's not a lot of money in 2022.
I know.
$100 billion.
Actually, I read it was like $100 million.
$100 million.
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know. I didn't say it if it's specified just for like 2021 or like all of Destiny 2 being out, but it said it was about 100. Destiny 2 has made about $100 million.
Do you recall which website you saw this on?
I could find it for you.
Sure.
I'll find it and I'll send it to you. Get a link it at the bottom.
That's a good idea there, Steve.
Right down here.
That's a good idea. Okay, so let us now focus a bit on the Bungie new IP, because I was able to find out a little bit of info on that. So, Bungie is currently developing a new franchise. Last we heard, the studio is hoping to become a multi-franchise company by 2025. So you see, they got these like long-term goals, which is great. Meaning Bungie is aiming to have at least one new franchise to go along Destiny 2. And Destiny 2, for that matter, will also remain multi-platform, and Bungie released a roadmap, like we talked about a little bit ago, detailing the future of the franchise after Sony's acquisition. The studio recently expanded its headquarters with plans to quote, tell new stories in the Destiny universe and create entirely new worlds in to be announced IPs, end quote. So Bungie's plans, are not necessarily secret in terms of what it is that, at least from a high level standpoint of what they're doing. You know, we have kind of a general overview of what they intend to do. So, what do you think about that, Steve?
Well, I would like to see something new come out of Bungie besides Destiny.
Oh, me too.
I'm just saying, like, I really, really enjoyed when Bungie was making the Halos. I feel like, 343 has really had to kind of get their ducks in a row to make a good Halo, and it's taken them years to do it.
Sure.
Rather, Bungie just went, okay, we have a great idea, and everyone's on board, and let's go for it. And I've enjoyed every Halo game they've made. So they have talent. I just never really got on the whole Destiny train. But I'd like to see them make something new.
Yeah.
Something else. So, I mean, if they come up with more Destiny stuff, I mean, Destiny has its own community for that. They'll be excited. I'm just going to kind of be, ho-hum about it. I remember we played Destiny 2, like the beta. And I was like, I was kind of curious. And we played with Big Baby Moose, and he had just a laundry list of stuff he was telling us about it and how great it was. I'm like, okay, cool, man. You love that game? And we love you. But then I started playing the game on my own after, I got some hardware that could support it the way I wanted it to. And I just couldn't get on the bandwagon.
Well, and that's perfectly fair. I mean, like, you're not going to absolutely be in love with every single game that you play. And
Sure.
I understand, like, Destiny as a franchise is not a game that has hooked me necessarily either, but it has legions of fans. There are a lot of people who are very happy with both Destiny 1 and Destiny 2. And I'm sure, as long as Bungie continues to support them, then they'll be pleased as pie.
Pleased as peaches.
Yes. Now, I realize that we haven't really talked really about the sting of this, which is, obviously Bungie used to be with Microsoft working on the Halo games. Sure. They designed and created one of our absolute favorite franchises in gaming history. We have spent, I don't even know how many countless hours playing the various Halo games. And so it's interesting, I recall when we were talking about Activision Blizzard being acquired by Xbox, specifically Crash Bandicoot, and how that was a mascot that was pretty synonymous with Sony. And this is definitely like, I don't know, it's a shrewd, calculating move in many different ways from Sony to do this. But I think that is one of the big ones that, I think any Xbox gamer has kind of opined and wished for Bungie to eventually make their triumphant return back to Microsoft. Not necessarily to make Halo games, although they could. But
that's what we want.
But just to be able to, like, it's like, the prodigal son has returned.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And now we just for the foreseeable future will not see that. And I can't help but think about, like, man, like that's a little bit of a sting. What do you think there?
It may be a sting, but it's almost a sting that's irrelevant in a way, because Bungie sold Halo. I mean, they're not getting it. I mean, I guess anything could happen. They could get it back, but
Microsoft owns Halo.
I mean, I'm just saying, like, Microsoft could have bought Bungie. They could have come back and said, hey, we're going to let you work on this now. We're going to pay you a buttload of money. And then, I mean, sure, that could happen. But I didn't see it happening again. I mean, because they were like, I watched videos, they were burnt out on Halo. Like, we want to do something completely different, which I don't really see Destiny as being that much completely different, to be honest. But I mean, digress.
Destiny has, I mean, they have a number of things that do separate it from Halo.
Right. But anyway, so they're done with that. That's why they sold it to 343. And so to think that, to associate Halo now with Bungie, I mean, in the past, yes, but in the future going forward, no. And so they didn't. So Sony didn't really steal it from Microsoft at all, because it's been years. Nothing's happened.
Yeah, and I don't think it's necessarily like them stealing it from Microsoft, because again,
swiping it underneath.
Essentially, like if there was a company that Bungie would agree to like go to, I think that there are a lot of Xbox gamers out there that have been kind of fantasizing in their own way about like, man, like, can you imagine how cool it'd be if Bungie were to return? And like, you know, who cares like what game they're working on, but just, I think just because the original Xbox system was launched, and Halo Combat Evolved was one of the launch games that launched with it, and again, they were with Microsoft for a long time.
Yeah,
I mean, I want to say it was probably like 10 years, somewhere around there. I mean, they were there. Like
speculation, Russ?
No, not. I mean, like, well, like the Xbox system, I think came out in 2001, and I want to say they left Xbox /Microsoft around like 2010, right around there. So I mean, it was, and then if you figure, you know, the development time before Halo came out with the system, yeah, you're talking about 10 years. So I think that's where it comes in, is that there's a lot of fawning and admiration and just gratefulness that a lot of these gamers had with regards to Bungie. So Sony doing that. And again, also it's calculating because Sony knows that like all of this stuff exists. And so for them to pull Bungie in, that's just one additional facet to like, you know, or I should say even like incentive for Sony to do what they've done. But I mean, it was the funniest thing, because I remember when the Activision Blizzard acquisition occurred and I posted on Twitter, it was like, I think it was on actually Xbox's announcement tweet. I said, "Your move, Sony." And my goodness, like that was like quite a move. I mean, it's pretty crazy, but okay. So now let us also pivot from that to talking about the main question, Steve, the big elephant in the room. Okay. The main question is, which studio is next?
Well, Russ, I got something that's probably not nice to say, but I'm gonna say it anyways.
Is it rated G?
Maybe PG.
Ooh.
Living on the edge.
Provocative.
I'm going to say whatever studio. If I'm going to find a theme so far, it's going to be like these scandals going on in the studios. Like, you know, Bungie had something going on that's not as big as like Blizzard, you know, going on, but they still had their own little stuff. I'm going to say if there's another studio who's having a scandal, they're next on the list, Russ.
They're next on the list.
They're going to be next on the list.
Now, to be fair, like all of those other studios that I was listening at the top of the show didn't necessarily have the type of, or at least to the magnitude of issues magnitude. So, but no, I think that perhaps a more accurate way of saying it is that companies that are in a weakened or vulnerable state could be the next ones on the list.
I would say a very desirable one, knowing how Microsoft purchased Activision Blizzard and everything they own. I would say EA would be on a pretty high list. Knowing that everything that's under the EA umbrella, if they bought it, either company, Sony or Microsoft, that would be ginormous acquisition, Russ. Think of all that content they would have if they bought EA. That would be expensive. That'd be some money.
It would be expensive. And I can't remember if we mentioned this when we were talking about the Activision Blizzard acquisition or not, but if I were to picture EA at like the negotiation table, I would expect them to really be requiring
Yes.
A ridiculous sum of money. Which is interesting when I think about it, because it wouldn't necessarily be solely based on like the games in their stable that they all own, but it's almost like they also want the bragging rights to be able to go onto social media and issue press releases about how, forget that $68.7 billion from Activision Blizzard. We got acquired for $500 billion. What's up? Like I could totally see them doing something like that.
That'd be terrible. I mean, you definitely don't want to brag about how much you bought a company for. I'm like, you want to know that, like, there's a win-win. Or are you talking about like EA's bragging about how they got bought, right?
Which is kind of funny in its own way, but sorry, go ahead.
But still, I mean, I would say, I don't know. I think that one would be on the table. I really do. I don't think EA necessarily wants to be bought, but I think if the right number was out there, maybe $100 billion. Oh man, that's a lot of money. Golly, that's a lot of money, though.
It really is.
Gosh,
it's like once you reach a certain point, the number is just all of a sudden you're just like, how do I calculate that?
How much money do you have?
Like, I mean, even like the $225 million. I mean, like $225 million is a lot of money. And then you go from that to something like $3.6 billion. I'm like, oh my goodness, those are billions. That's a B as in boy, that's billions of dollars. And then it goes on from there and it's just insane. I did want to also mention that with regards to Tencent, that they also currently have a 40% stake in Epic Games, which I think the only thing that's preventing them from just basically like buying them out is I think the founder has like some sort of setup, some sort of legal setup where like he is like the majority stakeholder. So, but I mean, that goes to show how, Tencent once again is one of those entities that has identified these AAA studios and essentially are like these financial backers. So it's pretty interesting to see how all of these relationships kind of work themselves out. Were you going to say something there, Steve?
I was actually going to go back to one of my previous point, which also was going to be with these acquisitions. Yes, there are the big name games. Kind of rhymed a little bit. But it's also the mobile games that they own.
He never told me he was a poet.
Oh my gosh. Just a Shakespeare over here.
I know. Wooing me.
No.
Oh.
Because a lot of these mobile games and these smaller games, they actually, some of them make more money than the bigger games, the bigger title ones.
Sure.
And the titles, for example, I had a guy I used to work with. He started working for Microsoft.
Okay.
And he was saying that like Halo makes a lot of money, but like Microsoft makes more money in some of the smaller games like Solitaire or something than like all of Halo, which makes like 0 sense to me. But then again, I'm not seeing the numbers come through. I don't even know what to buy in Solitaire. But apparently, maybe it's ads or something. Who knows? But some of these smaller companies who make just basic games, they charge these small little fees to play. But if you have millions of players who are all dumping $5 here, $5 here, multiplied by the tens of millions, that's going to make a buttload of cash.
Ooh.
And and there's some pretty big butts out there, Russ.
Is it stinky?
No.
Oh.
Not at all.
Smells like petunias?
Banaka, yes.
Oh, my goodness.
So like EA, for example, don't they, I mean, you know this more than me, but I mean, don't they have a lot of these small, mobile game companies?
No, they do. It's when it comes to the mobile platform, they have emerged as quite the audience. And it's something that I think a lot of folks early on could see happening in the future. I remember back around 2009, 2010, I was working on some iPhone games at the time. And that was not too far beyond when like the whole like app store became a thing. Steve Jobs was pushing it and everything else.
Right.
And the thing was back then you didn't have the installed base of users yet. Like everybody was still in that process of like getting to know the iPhone and like, oh, we have this thing called podcasts.
I just want to get my flame, my candle flame, so I can wave it in the air in concerts.
Watch the accelerometer. I can like open my lighter and close it. Yeah. Open it, close it. Wait. I can turn it on.
I just want to buy ringtones.
Yeah. So, but I think that was actually one of the main topics at GDC. Actually, you had a lot of the game industry leaders talking about, okay, you know, even though it's 2009, 2010, right around now, let's look 10 years ahead. Right. And these are the projections that we are seeing. And at the time, I think it was hard for a lot of both developers and gamers alike, you know, the hardcore gamers, when it came to console and PC, to think about, okay, is there a place for gaming on mobile? Just because everybody has been conditioned to, like, you know, you have your box in front of your TV, right? Whether it's an Xbox or PlayStation or PC, whatever, and you got your, you know, keyboard and mouse, or you have your controller, and on the phone, you don't have those things. So how on earth can they make this actually successful? Well, as time has gone on, there actually has been a tremendous installed base that has been accruing over the years. Right. And what's interesting is that a lot of them are casual gamers.
That's right.
You do have some of the hardcore gamers that do play mobile. Mm-hmm. But I'm telling you, like you were saying, like the solitaire, the poker, all those like type of like casual games has generated a ton of money. And just like what I was talking about earlier in the show, EA, you know, they acquired Glue Mobile, they acquired that other one I can't remember the name of, but like they also had certain games like Peggle that they, you know, originally it was for console and then they made a mobile version of it. So yeah, they've been in the mobile game now for quite some time. If you think about Take-Two Interactive, just this past month they acquired Zynga, and Zynga has been in mobile gaming for a long time. So what we're all seeing is this identifier that these behemoth publishers have made where they're like, okay, we need to have some sort of presence in this space. So
did you say who you thought was going to be acquired next, Russ? I know you asked me, but did you give your 50 cents?
No. It's difficult to know for sure. I mean, I wrote down a list. First of all, this is becoming a challenge because there have been so many acquisitions occurring as of late. Mm-hmm. So I thought to myself, well, who's left?
Yeah.
That's kind of interesting to think about because, okay, first of all, if you think of like a pie chart of the publishers that now, you know, kind of make up the overall pie, you have Microsoft Game Studios, or basically Xbox Studios.
Yeah.
You have Sony. You have EA Games, Ubisoft, Tencent. There's a huge one, and I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head.
Sounds amazing.
But no, I mean, like I was blown away by the sheer number of developers that they have underneath there. But you know, Square Enix is in there. But like you look at everyone and you realize, like, my goodness, like there aren't, you know, a tremendous amount of these behemoth publishers left. And so, you know, I'm looking at like, okay, well, there's Ubisoft, there's EA Games, there's Take-Two Interactive, Square Enix. Oh, I mean, WB Interactive is another one. Another publisher as well. It's difficult to say because I mean, I look at these, I don't necessarily think that EA would be next on the list. I think honestly, EA really enjoys its autonomy and its ability to be a publisher and not be owned by a bigger entity.
What about Capcom?
Well, Steve, we'll get there in a second.
Oh, come on.
You just love to buzz all over the narrative.
Here. Man, I like to fly. I just want to fly.
ADD over here. My goodness. It's it's difficult to say for sure. You know, part of me thinks that Square Enix could be on the docket just because, once again, they have the Final Fantasy series. Sure. And if we think about, like, every time that there is some sort of new Final Fantasy game that comes out, you have both Microsoft and Sony really aggressively going after, like, you know, oh, we get the exclusive first year contract, you know, or we get, like, whatever kind of, like, DLC drops and stuff first, or maybe they're able to have like the game just be exclusive to their particular console. But in any event, like that is something that I do think about. And, you know, in addition to like the Final Fantasy series and the treasure trove of other RPGs that they offer, they also have Tomb Raider because they have Crystal Dynamics.
That's true, Russ.
So I mean, like that is something that I could see being a possibility. I also think that, you know, I think Take-Two Interactive is a desirable publisher to also go after. I don't know if they're necessarily next, but I mean, when I think, once again, you know, they own the GTA franchise. It's like we talked about before. It's one of the biggest, if not the biggest, successful IP. I mean, that game alone has generated billions of dollars. I'd be curious to know if Fortnite, I mean, and this may be the case, Fortnite may have eclipsed GTA in terms of how much revenue they've generated. I don't know that for certain, but it would be interesting to do a cross analysis of that. But in addition to that, they have like the NBA 2K series, they have the Biohazard series, they have the Godfather or Mafia or whatever it was. You've played some of those games, right?
I have, yeah. Rest of the Mafia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, they have a number of properties under their belt that I think would also be ripe. Especially now that they have Zynga as well, because again, by having that already like expertise installed base within the mobile area, it's definitely, you know, not without the realm of possibility. Like if I look at this list and I look at like Ubisoft, EA, Take-Two, Square, WB. Now WB Interactive, I feel like would be in a little bit more of a funkier position just because they did that whole like bait and switch thing. Like, hey, we're going to sell. So no, we're not. And everyone's like, oh, I got my money. Oh, I do think it's worth noting, by the way, Steve.
Yes, Russ.
That I was also looking at an article that talked about Microsoft's approved budget for acquisitions.
Yes.
Apparently, they've only spent half of the approved budgets for acquisitions, which, if that article is correct, that means they have another $60 billion that's burning a hole in their corporate pocket that they're going to want to spend.
Ouch. That's hot. Ooh, that's fire. Right there, Russ.
60 bills.
But I mean, how long is that? Okay, so the budget's good for like what? Okay, we have a budget for 10 years.
No. See, this is what's really fun about this kind of thing, Steve. Typically in the corporate world, when you finally get the green light to have a budget approved, well, that budget is in fact approved. Now, the thing is that,
but for how long?
Well, I was gonna get to the fact that like sometimes you have to be able to spend that budget within an allotted amount of time, because then like if you don't, then like your future budgets will be decreased and that sort of thing.
And all the executives get brand new furniture.
But let's again, okay. I will play along in this instance of speculating. Okay.
Oh.
We try not to speculate too much on the show.
Yeah.
But think about it. Let's say, for instance, Microsoft has 1 year to be able to spend their entire budget on acquisitions. Well, $60 billion. Now, again, if I'm looking at a company like EA, honestly, I don't know if EA would go for that. However, if I'm looking at like Square Enix or I'm looking at Take-Two Interactive, I don't know. That sounds, at least worth having a conversation,
That's true.
But that's just me. I'm not privy to all of the insider talk. But isn't that nuts? That's 100. What was it? 68. Yeah, 68.7 bill. Yeah, they had over 113 billion dollars to spend. Somewhere around there. My goodness.
Boy. Imagine having that expense report. Whew. Okay, everybody's eating steak tonight and desserts. We don't want any. Yeah, you do.
Yeah, you do.
We're gonna acquire
and
something.
you're gonna have seconds.
And you're gonna bring some home to the kids.
To the kiddos. Now, again, those are just the publishers.
Right.
What about the developers that are left? Again,
You got to pick something, Russ.
well, I'm just trying to think of who's left.
I know.
Oh, yeah. Oh, suck it in, boy.
Stop touching me.
Okay. Now, this list is very short. So the developers themselves, so you have Epic Games, which again, Epic Games shouldn't necessarily be on the list just because Tencent already has 40% stake in the company. Well, okay. So you have Play Dead. If you recall, Play Dead Games, they're the ones who made Limbo and Inside.
Yeah.
Awesome developer. I could totally see either Sony or Microsoft being interested, and especially I think, I can't recall if Limbo and Inside were Xbox exclusive or if they came out on Sony as well.
I think they were just Xbox exclusive. I think
We'll have to look into that. Also, Crytek. And I don't know if you've played much of Crytek games or not, but they have the Cry engine.
Yeah. Cry is Cry engines different than Cryware?
Well, Cry, I don't know.
Which Cryan made the what's
their games are so beautiful they make me cry.
Oh, do they, Russ? No, you just saying that.
Okay, so they made Rise, Son of Rome.
That's what I was thinking of. Yeah.
Rise from your grave. That would be Altered Beast. No.
Remember that one.
Anyway, their Cry engine is known for actually like really putting systems and stuff to the test. And actually, when I was playing games back in the day as well,
I remember.
My goodness, some of the best looking games ever. Now, what was interesting is if you recall, they're kind of okay. You want to talk about like studios or companies that are in a vulnerable state?
Yes.
Rise, Son of Rome really didn't do as well as they thought they were going to do. And Microsoft was the one who published that particular title. They made a deal with Crytek. And ever since then, I think they've kind of been on the struggle bus financially and everything else. And so it's like, okay, well, you have the talent, there. You have the engine already good to go. Like you can clearly use that engine on any one of the IPs that your other studios are working on as well. If you want to share the tech, that could be a possibility. And then CD Projekt Red.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. That would be huge, especially after this. Well, we'll see what happens after the patch.
Yeah, the patch
comes out to make the game look good on all the systems. But yeah, CD Projekt Red that'd be big.
Yeah,
that'd be pretty darn big. Woo! They're hot.
Yeah. You got the Witcher series, then you have Cyberpunk 2077, you have Gwent. Oof. Then they have some other brand new IP they're working on as well.
Can't wait. Exciting.
So, but again, that's a small list. That's a short list. And again, obviously I didn't find every single one of like,
of course, Russ.
Most sought after, that sort of thing. But, as I was putting together and I was thinking about it, I was like, my goodness, like there have been several of these studios that, we've both enjoyed the games from, and they no longer are independent. Like they are now acquired. Also, what is interesting is if you look at like a pie chart of the Activision Blizzard, just joining of the Xbox family, someone had posted that like they did some research and they showed the amount of employees that each one of Xbox's studios contains. And they turned it into a pie chart. And what's crazy is that Activision Blizzard totally, like there's no competition or comparison. They are the lion's share now of staff that are part of the Xbox stable. And I want to say they have somewhere in the vicinity of like 10,000 employees. Oof. So when you look at you look at 343, little sliver. If you look at Playground Games, little sliver. You just go through all these and you're just like, my goodness, like they have so many people over there. And you can see why, my goodness, like $68.7 billion, that also probably played a bit of a role in that decision making.
A lot of salaries over there.
a lot of salaries. Oh my goodness. Now, I do have some questions I put together really quick. One of which you alluded to earlier, which is, what about...
I'm listening.
What about Japanese developers?
I asked you that last time.
That's what I just said. That's what I said.
What about the Japanese developers, Russ?
Well, it's interesting to me that so far we have been seeing largely these American developers that are getting developers getting acquired, but we really haven't seen any activity on the Japanese side. And so, we talked about, once again, during the Activision Blizzard acquisition, that Sony really enjoys a healthy margin ahead of Xbox in Japan. Like the Japanese gaming community really, really loves Sony. And so I think that does make sense logically that Sony wouldn't necessarily be as aggressive going after some of these Japanese studios because they already, they're a success story in Japan. Which leaves Xbox, which again, Xbox has always had a rough time establishing itself in Japan. Well, one of those possible antidotes is being able to bring in Namco, Capcom, Konami, From Software. Although I think From Software may be in the Sony camp now. It's so hard to keep track of all this merging going on, There's a lot of that going on, Steve. A lot. Are there any other Japanese studios you can think of, Steve?
Sega.
You are correct. Sega would be another one. Golly, could you remember? Okay.
What, Russ?
Imagine if Nintendo all of a sudden got in on the acquisition train and they ended up acquiring Sega. Even that is just... I don't know, like these types of scenarios, like if we were to talk about this just like 6 months ago or something, I'd be like, no, that would never happen. What are you talking about? Especially given like the lineage of like during the 8-bit, 16-bit days and that sort of thing. And it was crazy enough to see a game like Sonic the Hedgehog appear for the Nintendo Switch. I'm like, what? This is a Twilight Zone? Like I had never thought I would see the day that would happen, but in this instance, what if Nintendo all of a sudden comes out of the woodwork and doesn't want to be left out of all of the acquisition goodness, and suddenly
we want headlines.
Yeah, they're just like, oh yeah, by the way, Sonic has now joined Mario. You're like, what?
They got their homie handshake.
It's insane, Steve.
That is, yeah.
It's really insane. Some other questions I have is if Bungie remains multi-platform, what does Sony gain from the deal? Because we have talked a little bit about, okay, they'll obviously are going to be like sharing profits and that sort of thing from sales of the games and stuff, regardless of whether they're exclusive or if they're multi-platform. However, is there anything else? And so I wrote down a few things. I was thinking about how PlayStation Studios will also gain access probably to Bungie's proprietary tools, which can be used for PlayStation Studios teams. So like, if there are other studios within the first party stable of Sony who like maybe for instance, they really love the game engine that they've built with Destiny and they want to use it, they could do that. Positions them once again for a Sony Game Pass cross-play sales kind of situation, which again, honestly, is really not that far-fetched given what we're seeing and what we're hearing.
It's true.
Exclusives to Sony,
of course.
Even though they are touting the whole, like, we will continue to be multi-platform. They're going to make exclusives that are just for Sony to provide incentives.
That's right.
To be able to buy their console.
Come on. But the still the thing is, I just don't see a lot of that happening. Because there's like hardly any markup in the console. They don't make their money by people buying their console. Like
right.
The bulk of their money is not made by people buying the console.
Oh, Steve, you touch on something else.
Am I playing footsie with you? Is my knee on your knee, Russ?
No.
How about now?
No. That's what happens when you're short.
Oh, yeah? Come on now. I like that.
Steve.
Onward, Russ. What were you going to say?
Well, go ahead.
That's all I had to say, Russ.
Well, finish your thoughts, Steve.
The content is where the money is. It's not the hardware, but that's the software and all that DLC. That's where again, I made this point earlier. They can't say, "Oh, you have to buy our console to play this game," because okay, great, you're limiting your 2/3 of the market, Xbox and PC, and you're not going to get any money from anymore. And they're like, "Oh, go ahead and buy our console, which is only marked up like 15%." Yeah, that's that. They're not going to do that, Russ. They might do that a little bit. I don't see them doing it a lot.
You realize that you are alluding to something that you fear, don't you? And that is that there is a very clear and present possibility that in the not too distant future, there could be no more physical consoles, and that there may be something that can be piped into your very own TVs. And that would be Game Pass.
You still got to play with something, Russ. You still got to have something on your hand.
It's true.
To play with.
But what if they, I mean, do you agree? I mean, if you think about the fact that, like, what if they were able to successfully go the route of Google Stadia with not having a console at all? They would, like, provide a controller.
Yeah, it's not going to.
But then with the, the evolution of smart TVs being able to, like, be connected via Ethernet cable and everything else, and they can pipe in. How is that different from, like, a Netflix or Amazon Prime or Disney Plus? If you have basically like an Xbox app or a Sony app, and you go in, you have a subscription to that, and then they have their whole library of games you can play.
We've been over this, Russ.
I know, but what I'm saying is I think they're eventually going to figure out how to deal with all the latency issues, and suddenly that will become the reality.
That's far in the future. Yes, eventually that'll happen. That's way down the line.
How way down the line, Steve?
I would say 10 years.
10 years is not a long time, Steve.
Well, it's a long time. You're right. But it's not exactly tomorrow now, is it?
That's literally one generation cycle away, Steve. One.
We're still trying to figure out 5G, for crying out loud. Not only that,
we don't use 5G on the TVs.
I'm just saying, with TVs, you mentioned earlier, okay, what's the difference between, like, Stadia and Netflix and stuff? I'll tell you, it's because you're only uploading something. You're not giving it constant commands where it has to, like, process all this stuff.
Oh, I know.
You're uploading one thing only, and that's it, and then push and play. That's all you're doing. If it was constant, like, feedback from millions of players, and some server somewhere has to register all this on the game that you're playing, it's going to bog it down and slow it down so much that it's not going to be really fun to play anymore.
Right, but my theory is that they are going to figure out how to fix that. And 10 years may be the amount of time they need in order to fix that. So it's interesting to think about what it is that you just talked about with regards to whether or not they have exclusives or not, because they very well may be that the long game is they will, in fact, be multi-platform because of that type of setup where regardless of whether you're on your phone, your tablet, your TV, wherever it is that you want to play a game, they will then adopt this kind of Netflix type of app approach. And suddenly it doesn't matter anymore because you're playing games that are based off of a subscription platform. I mean, it's kind of interesting to think about like that.
I don't think I'll think about it.
Throws the whole paradigm out the window in terms of the traditional way.
My window. What else you got?
Well, going back to if Bungie remains multi-platform, what does Sony gain from the deal? One of the last things I had written down was that it puts one of the best first-person shooter developers in Sony's camp, which they need, considering the fact that they acquired the Call of Duty developers. And it wasn't just one, it was all of them. So, when you think about first-person shooters, man, I can't really think of other FPS games on Sony that are exclusive.
I can't either. It's all like third-party stuff, but that's nothing exclusive.
Because if you think about it, like Sony right now is known for its narrative games, which I mean, we both love that. Yeah. But if you look outside of that, it's like, maybe they'll be able to get some sort of mini exclusive deal with like Final Fantasy as an RPG or something like that. But I mean, Microsoft, though, has more of the first-person shooters and RPGs at this point in time anyway, just really locked up. So again, that was a really good move on Sony's part to be able to shore up like, one of the top tier talents for FPS. So that way they will always have one of those being able to represent. I mean, it was a great move. The whole thing was great.
Yeah.
Finally, the question I have is, how will Sony's culture impact Bungie's culture? What do you think, Steve?
I don't think it will.
Not at all?
Not very much, no.
Because how Bungie has been getting some bad press about how there's kind of a toxic work culture. They overwork their employees. They're getting burned out, that sort of thing. Do you think that Sony, being this much larger entity, will have any kind of sway in terms of like how they are able to manage that better? Or do you think they'll just be completely hands off, let them do whatever they do and not have any kind of new accountability?
I think they'll probably release some statements and some like rules or something. But I mean, the reason they're getting involved is not because they want to shake things up and change everything. They're just saying, hey, you're a moneymaker. We want a piece of that pie.
You're coming over here. You're shaking my monkey tree again.
I mean, they might shake the apple tree to get some apples, but I mean, eventually they're going to continue letting the apple tree grow, because if they just dig it up and be like, my tree now, and they take it with them, well, the tree's probably just traumatized and probably not going to produce that much fruit. But if you go, hey, this is a great tree, I want to buy the property this tree is growing on and just keep on fertilizing it so it makes more fruit, to me, that makes a lot of sense, Russ.
Indeed.
I think that's what's going to happen. Now, Sony's not going to want the bad press.
No.
But I mean, I doubt they're going to come over there and be just like totally looking over everybody's shoulder. Huh, what'd you say? Oh, what's going on over there? They misinterpret that. And I don't see it.
I do wonder though, and this is not limited to Sony, but in terms of Xbox as well, with all of these acquisitions that they're making.
Yeah, Russ.
Because if you think about like the bad press from Activision and Blizzard.
Excuse me. Getting comfortable over here.
When it comes to that, though, I think that there is a hope or a desire from not only the employees that work there, but also several folks who work just generally in the gaming industry about how there will be some oversight. There will be kind of a reorg that occurs that is for the better, that is healthy, that does address these issues, hopefully once and for all. But, when you reach a certain size, I do think certain maturity starts to come into play. Not always. Even with larger entities and that sort of thing, then that presents a whole host of new issues that, like, say, for instance, a developer didn't have before. So, I mean, it's a growing pains process. But I think at the end of the day, I think the employees are they're wanting security, they're wanting stability. They want to be able to make the games that they love to make and do so in an environment that fosters and supports their creativity as well as their safety and well-being.
Stability is good, Russ.
It is a very good thing. Do you have any final thoughts, Steve?
No, Russ. I think we pretty much covered everything. We've lathered it.
At least until the next merger.
Oof.
That wraps up this episode of Joygasm. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. If you enjoyed this episode, we invite you to check out patreon.com/Joygasm, where you can enjoy exclusive perks and early access to the show. Not to mention, it continues financially helping us doing the show. Also, make sure you click on that subscribe button and click on that notification bell. That way you will not miss a single episode of Joygasm. It drops once a week, every week. And while you're at it, do a search for @Joygasm TV on your favorite social media platform of choice. We're on just about all of them, and we definitely would love to have you be added to our Joygasm family. We have all kinds of fun little pics and videos that we like to put up there that are pretty adorable. Last but not least, make sure you do a search for Joygasm TV on Twitch to see us stream our gaming adventures live every 9:30 p.m. Central Time.
Wednesday.
Yes, Wednesday indeed. We will look forward to hanging out with all of you again next week.